Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dear students, welcome back. I am Sheikh Babar Hamid and I am teaching you wireless mobile communication. In last lecture, we were discussing spread sequence and in which we studied two basic techniques, that was frequency hopping spread spectrum and direct sequence spread spectrum. Today I am going to discuss code division multiple access. Basic principles of code division multiple access. It is a multiplexing technique used with spread spectrum. The scheme works in the following manner. We start with the data signal with rate D, which we call the bit data rate. We break each bit into k chips according to a fixed pattern that is specific to each user, called the user's code. The new channel has a chip data rate of kd chips per second. As an illustration, we consider a simple example with k is equal to 6. It is simplest to characterize a code as a sequence of ones and minus ones, as you can see in figure 7.10. It shows the codes of three users: A, user B, user C, each of which is communicating with the same base station. Thus, the code for user A is CA, that is equal to 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, minus 1, 1. Similarly, user B has a code that is CB. It is 1, 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, 1. And user C has CC, that is 1, 1, minus 1, 1, 1, minus 1. We now consider the case of user A, that is communicating with base station. The base station is assumed to know A's code. For simplicity, we assume that communication is already synchronized so that base station knows when to look for codes. If A wants to send a 1 bit, A transmits its code as a chip pattern, that is 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, minus 1, 1. If a 0 bit is to be sent, A transmit complement, ones complement, that means ones and minus ones reverse of its code. Then it will send minus 1, 1, 1, minus 1, 1, minus 1. At the base station, the receiver decodes the chip pattern. In our simple version, if the receiver R receives a chip pattern D, that is D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, D6, and receiver is seeking to communicate with a user U so that it has hand U's code C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6. The receiver performs electronically the following decoding function: SU of D equal to D1 times C1 plus D2 times C2 plus D3 times C3 plus D4 times C4 plus D5 times C5 plus D6 times C6. The subscript U on S simply indicates that U is the user that we are interested in. Let us suppose that the user U is actually A, and see what happens. If A sends a 1 bit, then D is 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, minus 1, 1. And the preceding computation using SA becomes SA of 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, minus 1, 1. It is equal to 1 times 1 plus minus 1 times minus 1 plus minus 1 times minus 1 plus minus 1 times minus 1 plus 1 times 1, and whole result will be equal to 0. If A sends a bit 0, that corresponds to D minus 1, 1, 1, minus 1, 1, minus 1. We get S of A of minus 1, 1, 1, minus 1, 1, minus 1, that will be equal to minus 1 times 1, 1 times minus 1, 1 times minus 1, minus 1 times 1, 1 times minus 1, 1 times minus 1, and minus 1 times 1. And these all products will be added up to give us the result equal to minus 6. Please note that it is always the case that minus 6 is less than or equal to SA of D, or conversely I can say that SA of D is in between minus 6 to 6, no matter what sequence of minus 1 or 1s comprise D, and that the only values of D resulting in the extreme values of 6 and minus 6 are A's code and its complement respectively. So if SA produces a plus 6, we say that we have received a 1 bit from A. If SA produces a minus 6, we say that we have received a 0 bit from user A. Otherwise, we assume that someone else is sending information or there is an error. So why go through all this? The reason becomes clear if we see what happens if user B is sending and we try to receive it with SA, that is, we are decoding with wrong code, is if B sends 1, then D is equal to 1, 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, 1. Then SA of 1, 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, 1. That will be equal to 1 times 1, 1 times minus 1, minus 1 times minus 1, minus 1 times 1, 1 times minus 1, and 1 times 1. And the sum of all these products will be equal to 0. Thus, the unwanted signal from B does not show up at all. You can easily verify that if B had sent a 0 bit, the decoder would produce a value of 0 for SA again. This means that if decoder is linear and if A and B transmit signal, SA and SB respectively. At the same time, then SA of SA plus SB equal to SA of SA plus SA of SB equal to SA of SA. Since the decoder ignores B when it is using A's code, the codes of A and B that have property that SA of CB is equal to SB of CA equal to 0. These are called orthogonal. Such codes are very nice to have, but there are not all that many of them. More common is the case when Sx of Cy is small in absolute value. When x times y, then it is easy to distinguish between the two cases when x is equal to y and when x is not equal to y. In our example, SA of CC and SC of CA equal to 0, but SB of CC equal to SC of CB, it will be equal to 1. In the latter case, the signal would make a small contribution to the decoded signal instead of 0. Using the decoder SU, the receiver can sort out transmission from U even when there are many other users broadcasting in the same cell. Now look at table 7.1. It summarizes the example from preceding discussion. In practice, CDMA receiver can filter out the contribution from unwanted users, or they appear as low-level noise. However, if there are many users competing for the channel with the user the receiver is trying to listen to, or if the signal power of one or more competing signal is too high, perhaps because it is very near the receiver, that is near far problem, the system breaks down. Now I am going to discuss CDMA for direct sequence spread spectrum. Let us look at CDMA from viewpoint of direct sequence spread spectrum system using binary phase shift keying. Figure 7.11 depicts a configuration in which there are n users, each transmitting a different orthogonal PN sequence as compared to figure 7.7. For each user, the data stream to be transmitted di of t is binary phase shift keying modulated to produce a signal with a bandwidth of Ws and then multiplied by the spreading code for the user Ci of t. All of the signals plus noise are received at receiver antenna. Suppose that receiver is attempting to recover the data of user 1. The incoming signal is multiplied by the spreading to recover code of user 1 and then demodulated. The effect of this is to narrow the bandwidth of that portion of incoming signal corresponding to user 1 to the original bandwidth of the unspread signal, which is proportional to the data rate, because the remainder of incoming signal is orthogonal to spreading code of user 1. that remainder still has the bandwidth Ws. Thus, unwanted signal energy remains spread over a large bandwidth and wanted signal is concentrated in a narrow bandwidth. The bandpass filter at demodulator can therefore recover the desired signal. Now, I am moving towards an important topic, that is generation of spreading sequence. As we mentioned earlier, the spreading sequence CT is sequence of binary digits that is shared by transmitter and receiver. Spreading consists of multiplying, or actually it is XORing of the input data by spreading sequence, where the bit rate of spreading sequence is higher than that of input data when the signal is received. The spreading is removed with the same spreading code, exactly synchronized with the received signal. The resulting data rate is consequently that of spreading sequence. This increases the transmitted data rate and therefore increases the required bandwidth. The redundancy of the system is also increased. The spreading codes are chosen so that the resulting signal is noise-like. Therefore, there should be an approximately equal number of ones and zeros in the spreading code and few or no repeated patterns. When spreading codes are used in a CDMA application, there is a further requirement of lack of correlation. When multiple signals are received, each spread with different spreading code, the receiver should be able to pick out of any individual signal using the signal's spreading code. The spreading signal should behave as if they were uncorrelated with each user, so that other signal will appear as noise and not interfere with despreading of particular signal. Because of the higher degree of redundancy provided by the spreading operation, the despreading operation is able to cope with interference of other signals in the same bandwidth. Two general categories of spreading sequence have been used. One is PN sequence, and PN sequence, formerly known as pseudo random noise sequence, and the other is orthogonal codes. Pseudo random noise sequence are the most common ones used in frequency hopping spread spectrum systems, and in direct sequence spread spectrum system not employing CDMA. In direct sequence spread spectrum code vision multiple access systems, both pseudo random noise and orthogonal codes have been used. We examine each of the approaches in turn. Look at the slide of PN sequences. An ideal spreading sequence would be a random sequence of binary ones and zeros. However, because it is required that transmitter and receiver must have a copy of the random bit stream, a predictable way is needed to generate the same bit stream at transmitter and receiver and yet retain desirable properties of random bit stream. Thus, requirement is met by PN generator. A PN generator will produce a periodic sequence that eventually repeats, but that appears to be random. The period of the sequence is the length of the sequence before it starts repeating. PN sequences are generated by an algorithm using some initial value called seed. The algorithm is deterministic and therefore produces sequence of numbers that are not statistically random. However, if the algorithm is good, the resulting sequence will pass many reasonable tests of randomness. Such numbers are often referred to as pseudo-random numbers or pseudo-noise sequences. An important point is that unless you know the algorithm and the seed, it is impractical to predict the sequence. Hence, only a receiver that shares this information with the transmitter will be able to decode the signal successfully. Pseudo-random sequence finds a number of uses in computers and communications, and the principles involved are developed. We begin with a general description of desirable properties of pseudo-random noise and then look at the generation method typically used for spread spectrum application. First, I am going to discuss properties of PN. Two important properties of PNs are randomness and unpredictability. Traditionally, the concern in generation of sequence of allegedly random numbers has been the sequence of the numbers be random in some well-defined statistical sense. The following two criteria are used to validate that sequence of numbers is random. Number one is uniform distribution. The distribution of number in the sequence should be uniform. That is, the frequency of occurrence of each of the numbers should be approximately the same. For a stream of binary digits, we need to expand on this definition because we are dealing with only two numbers, and that are 0 and 1. Generally, we desire the following two properties. Number one, balance property. In a long sequence, the fraction of binary ones should approach 1 by 2. And the other is run property. A run is defined as sequence of all ones or sequence of all zeros. The appearance of alternate digit marks the beginning of a new run. About 1/2 of the runs of each type should be of length 1, 1/4 of the length 2, 1/8 of the length 3, and so far. One property that I discussed was uniform distribution. Now, the second property that is vital, it is independence. No one value in the sequence can be inferred from the others. Although there are well-defined tests for determining that sequence of the numbers match a particular distribution, such as the uniform distribution, there is no such test to prove independence. Rather, a number of tests can be applied to demonstrate that sequence does not exhibit independence. The general strategy is to apply a number of such tests until the confidence that independence exists is sufficiently strong. In applications such as spread spectrum, there is also the following requirement. One is correlation property. If a period of sequence is compared term by term with the cycle shift of itself, the number of terms that are same differs from those that are different by most 1. Now, I am going to discuss an important topic, that is linear feedback shift register implementation. The pseudorandom generator for spread spectrum is usually implemented as circuit consisting of XOR gates and a shift register, that is called a linear feedback shift register, or we can say that LFSR. The LFSR, a string of 1-bit storage devices. Each device has an output line which indicates the value currently stored and an input line at discrete time instances known as clock. Time the value in the storage device is replaced by the value indicated by its input line. The entire LFSR is clocked simultaneously, causing a 1-bit shift along the entire register. The circuit is implemented as follows. It has following components. 1. The LFSR contains n bits. 2. There are from 1 to n-1 XOR gates. 3. The presence or absence of gate corresponds to presence or absence of term in a generator polynomial explained subsequently. P of x excluding the x raised to power nth term. Two equivalent ways of characterizing the PN LFSR are used. We can think of the generator as implementing a sum of XOR terms. Mathematically, Bn equal to A node B node XOR A1 B1 XOR A2 B2 XOR and so on so far An-1 Bn-1. Now look at figure 7.12. It illustrates this equation. An actual implementation would not have the multiply circuits. Instead, for Ai equal to 0, the corresponding XOR circuit is eliminated. Figure 7.13a is an example of 4-bit LFSR that implements the equation, that is B3 equal to B naught XOR B1. The shift register technique has several important advantages. The sequence generated by an LFSR can be nearly random with long periods. which aids in making the spread signal appear noise-like. In addition, LFSR are easy to implement in hardware and can run at high speeds. This is important because the spreading rate is higher than the data rate. It can be shown that the output of LFSR is periodic with maximum period n, that is equal to 2 raised to power n minus 1. The all zeros sequence occurs only if their initial contents of the LFSR are all 0 or coefficients in equation 7.7 are all 0. It means that there is no feedback. A feedback configuration can always be found that give a period of n. The resulting sequences are called maximal length sequence or M sequence. The M sequences are important in enabling synchronization by the receiver and in use in multiple access techniques such as CDMA, as will be explained. Now look at figure 7.13. It shows the generation of an M sequence for the LFSR of figure 7.13a. The LFSR implements equation 7.8 with an initial state of 1000. I repeat, figure 7.13b shows the generation of an M sequence for the LFSR of the figure 7.13a. The LFSR implements equation 7.8 with an initial state of 1, 0, 0, 0, in which B3 equal to 1, B2 equal to 0, B1 equal to 0 and B0 is also equal to 0. Figure 7.13b is a table that shows the step-by-step operation as the LFSR is clocked 1 bit at a time. Each row of the table shows the values currently stored in 4 shift register elements. In addition, the row shows the values that appears at the output of exclusive OR circuit. Finally, the row shows the values of the output bit, which is just B node. Note that the output repeats after 15 bits. That is, the period of sequence or the length of M sequence is 15. That will be equal to 2 raised to power 4, 16 minus 1. The same periodic M sequence is generated regardless of the initial state of LFSR, except for 0, 0, 0, 0, as shown in table 7.2. With each different initial state, the M sequence begins at a different point in its cycle, but it is the same sequence. For any given size of LFSR, a number of different unique M sequences can be generated by using different values from AI in equation 7.7. Now look at table 7.3. It shows the sequence, length and number of unique M sequences that can be LFSRs of various sizes. An equivalent definition of an LFSR configuration is a generator polynomial. The generator polynomial Px that correspond to equation 7.7 has the form P of x equal to a node plus a1x plus a2x square plus and so on and so forth an minus 1 times x raised to power n minus 1 plus x raised to power n. Only one useful attribute of generator polynomial is that it can be used to find the sequence generated by corresponding LFSR by taking the reciprocal of the polynomial. For example, the 3-bit LFSR with P of x equal to 1 plus x cube. We perform the division 1 by 1 plus x cube. It depicts the long division. The result is 1 plus x square plus 0 times x cube, means it is neglected, plus x raised to power 4 plus 0 times x raised to power 5 plus 0 times x raised to power 6, both are neglected. After which the pattern repeats. This means that the shift register output is 1 1 1 0 1 0 0, because the period of the sequence is 7 equal to 2 raised to power 3 minus 1. This is an M sequence. Notice that we are doing division somewhat differently from normal method. This is because the subtractions are done modulo 2 or using the XOR function, and in this system subtraction produces the same result as addition. Table 7.3 lists a generator polynomial that produces an M sequence for LFSRs of various sizes. Now, till now we have discussed generation of LFSR with basic understanding of code vision multiple access. Inshallah, in next lecture we will continue our discussion with the properties of M sequences. Till then, take care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.